Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev with me, DJ Q Macro. And yes, I've just seen the message from Helmut. Good morning to Helmut in Braunschweig, Brunswick in Germany. 33 people are waiting, DJ. Seems that you hit the nerve. I think I did. I'm really happy that we've got folks on here. Yeah, a little bit of a different sort of angle this morning, today, and probably also the next few Fridays. You know, we want to take our time over the next, the next sort of passage of discovery here together. So good morning to Henry in good morning from a cloudy Manchester to a cloudy Netherlands to Henry in a cloudy Netherlands, and good morning to Niels as well. Welcome everybody. If you're a regular and just joining again, thank you very much for joining. It's lovely to see you. And if you're new, also a super extra welcome to you too. Feel free to just lurk and just have this on in the background, or feel also free to say as much as you want in the chat. Ask as many questions, right? So Bilen, good afternoon to Malaysia. Welcome to Malaysia, and everybody as well. So yeah, this is, as it says above here, back to basics. We've been doing a lot of, fairly deep, detailed, hardcore stuff recently. So I thought it would be quite nice to sort of take a step back and just cover some of the more basic fundamental building blocks, as you can see there over on my there we go, on my left. I guess that's Lego, really, Lego building blocks. And recently, I probably know. Actually, let me just switch to the main scene so I can start sharing and everything. Good morning to VJ and Akshath, and to let me just make sure Guyver. Is that like that's an intriguing name. That's fantastic. Good morning anyway, and good morning to Joe and also to Nico. Welcome. Let me switch to my second thing, my browser thing, and yeah, we've got lots to share. So yeah, the reason why we thought it would be quite good to sort of do a little bit of a back to basics series is that we have been doing a 2 minutes of series, all sorts of different topics, one of which is SAP UI5, one of which is ABAP, one of which is API basics, one of which is cloud native. If I just share this link here, so rather than share the individual playlists or videos, you can check that out. And if you have not subscribed already, why not? Go and subscribe and hit that bell icon. That's what they say on YouTube, isn't it? Hit that bell icon so you don't miss an episode that we put out, right? It's very important to subscribe. And good morning to Pavan and to Ono in a sunny Den Bosch in the Netherlands. Okay, so different weather in the Netherlands. Yeah, so I'm going for, I've not put any lights on, I've got a little light there, but yeah, I think it should be okay. Let me know if you see any tears in my green screen. I saw it when I was doing the playback last Friday to do the chapter titles and everything. I have to play it through at sort of double speed so I can type things in. And I noticed there was a tear in my green screen. It's like, somebody should tell me. Anyway, we're going back to basics with stuff, right? So if you're not already aware, if we have a look at the playlists, we have a API basics playlist. Let me just share that, and you can have a look. And because a lot of the stuff that we will be covering either directly or indirectly on this Back to Basics OData little series will be building upon even more fundamental building blocks, HTTP and REST. Okay, so have a look at those. Also, while we're here, this week's SAP Developer News is out. You can see there Antonio, so let me just share that as well. Developer News there. Stop. Whoa. I'm going to be sharing lots of links today, I think, because it's always good to share, right? Akhilesh, good morning. And Sanjay, good morning to you. And Christian, good morning. My goodness me. Okay, so let's get going. What we're going to be talking about, and this is going to be I would like this to be even more intensely your episode and your series. Ask questions, point things out, share stuff that you know. Good morning, Ian. Good morning and welcome. So let's discover or rediscover OData together, right? There's no stupid questions. There's no bad questions. There's no questions that are too simple. Let's just make sure we get our brains around one of the really important protocols, one of the really important standards that ties lots of things together in the SAP world and beyond, right? Which is OData. And hopefully, I mean, if nothing else, it's a wonderful discovery of, how standards come together and how they all work together. But also, there's this new GraphQL, I am an old man. It's this new GraphQL initiative that's coming around, and GraphQL is super exciting and super important and super interesting. And it's quite orthogonal in many ways, quite different to OData and REST. Some would say, including me, that well, no, actually, I'm not going to be prerogative. I'm not going to say any negative things about GraphQL yet. But in order to understand where GraphQL is coming from and what it does and how it differs, it would be really cool to understand OData as well, because it's fair to say that a lot of the criticism leveled at RESTful APIs, which are quote unquote solved by GraphQL, that criticism is nonsense, right? So hopefully this will give you the knowledge you need to make your own decision and weigh up the pros and cons of each, right? Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Peter. So where are we going to start? Well, let's start because I thought you could all play along together. So I've created a little repo that you can all, clone and play along when I do. And we're deliberately starting very simple. We've got a little OData service and a little consumer app. Okay, so we can start to sort of have a think about what OData looks like, how OData is consumed by mechanisms like the OData model mechanism in UI5. That's probably going to be a very common thing for all of us here. Raghu, hi, greetings for the day, Raghu. So let's go there. So we've got here github.com, SAP samples, OData basics, hands-on SAP dev. So this is a brand new almost this week. So the lovely folks in our open source program office helped me get this online quite quickly this week, very quickly in fact, so thank you all to those people. So let me just share that URL with you. Bilan says, but DJ, there are many startups still rely on REST APIs and GraphQL, but I don't see anyone really want to use OData for their data flow. Well, Bilan, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. But I'm going to respond with like a 2-point response, which is OData, the protocol, is a really nice example of REST, a RESTful implementation of an HTTP-based API. There are lots of APIs out there, HTTP APIs that people say is really RESTful. They're not RESTful. There are lots that are RESTful. OData is a really nice example of a RESTful API. If you look at the REST 2 minutes of video, you'll understand what it is to be RESTful. But also, if we go, for example, to the API Business Hub, you will see a ton of APIs here, and all of those are OData based. Okay, so it's a really important thing. It's an open public standard. It's a very well established and very mature standard, and very capable as well. And if you look at it from the other way around, in the SAP and enterprise world in general, and Microsoft and IBM and lots of other large organizations, OData is still at the core of so much API traffic. Okay, so it's really important to understand OData, I think. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Christian, for letting me know. I don't have the normal equipment right now. I am sitting in a different room. It's a long story. So I've only got my small screen here. That's why I'm looking down at my small screen. So yeah, I apologize for the mic sounding thing. a mic sounding thing. What's that for the microphone quality? I'm using the microphone on my Logitech Stream Cam here. I don't have my Blue Yeti, so hopefully maybe next week, maybe the week after, I'll have my equipment back again. Oh well, thanks Nico. Yeah, so if it gets too hard to hear, then let me know. I'll try and make some adjustments. But yes, thank you for noticing, Christian. Yes. Hopefully, yeah, there are many startups that still rely on REST API and GraphQL. Yes, there are. I do think, and this is a personal opinion, everything I say is a personal opinion, right? I do think that people are maybe too eager to throw away the decades of standardization and solid reliability of HTTP APIs and REST APIs in favor of the new and shiny, right? GraphQL. This happened 15 years ago as well with, oh yeah, let's move away from sort of HTTP-based APIs and go to web services and SOAP and XML RPC, and look where that ended up. Nowhere, down the bin, down the drain. Okay, so this hopefully will give you, everybody here, the ability to make your own mind up, but also to make the most out of all these APIs that are available to us on the API business. So, there are some SOAP APIs here still remaining. I think, I think personally, I would think of those as sort of legacy. Nobody builds SOAP APIs anymore. So there we go. So I love all the comments. The comments are brilliant. OData is kind of standard, but what do you think about gRPC? Isn't that more suitable for ERP projects? That's a really interesting question. gRPC, it's almost like, so for those who are not really aware of that, that's more, again, I use this word orthogonal. RPC, remote procedure call. One of the things about OData, let's establish this, is that it uses HTTP as it was intended, i.e. as an application protocol. So there are nouns and there are verbs and there are resources, and you can act upon those resources, create, read, update, delete, and so on, using HTTP methods in a very uniform way, in a very constrained and standardized and predictable way. So this is all, and that's all about, therefore, pushing and pulling representations of resources between clients and servers, right? RPC is completely different. RPC is like, for those of us in the SAP world, it's a little bit like RFC, remote function calls, making an opaque call with parameters and so on to an endpoint, and each of the endpoints looks completely different. So your mileage may vary. I mean, I think in terms of where we are with the API business hub and where we are with the APIs, I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that I can take my knowledge of HTTP, REST, and OData, where we have a finite number of verbs, get, put, post, delete, patch, and so on, and an almost infinite number of resources to act upon. And that for me is a much more sensible way of thinking about the surface area, right? The one really cool thing to think about is how SAP Graph will enhance that as well, okay? But that's a story for another time. So Vijay says, I'm working for data migration. I am using ETL tools. Recently started exploring the OData data loads, which is already available in SAP. Yeah, okay, so so I think you continue typing there. If any standard OData is not available, I think to develop a RAP API since the since SAP is recommending to go forward with RAP rather than in OData with, yeah, okay, but the key thing is, you're absolutely right, the key thing is the RESTful application programming model, which is what RAP is, right? That allows us to build very comfortably OData services and RESTful services, basically. So yeah, rather than use, I mean, you still can use Segware, which is the transaction in the SAP system that allows you to sort of declare and define OData services, at a low level or lower level. So yeah, okay. So okay, thanks, Christian. It's fine, good. So what is the recommended way for future development for data migration, RAP or traditional Segware? Either. I mean, RAP, it depends on how you approach where you're coming from, but definitely there's a ton of resources in the RAP topic that allow you to more rapidly, see what I did there? I just made it up, to more rapidly build the services that you want to build, but also build them in such a way that they're more easily maintainable because you're defining them at an abstract level, right? Plus, RAP is very close to CAP, the Cloud Application Programming Model, in one really important sense, i.e. the language, the declarative language with which you define your services, which is core data services, CDS, is more or less the same. There are some slight differences, but start thinking in terms of this declarative language, and the transition between RAP and CAP, vice versa, in either direction, becomes a lot more, it makes a lot more sense, right? Actually, by the way, keep these questions. This is fantastic. We don't have to rush through this. You know, we've got, you know, each of these. If you're just joined for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Each of these episodes is an hour, so we have to, you know, cut off after an hour. But I foresee a little series of these because we want to take our time learning OData. So will REST completely replace SOAP? Hasn't it already? No. I mean. That's a question that presses one of my buttons. What are the main differences? Well, one of the things that we've talked about, in fact, in answer to the question, I think it was, who was it? Let me just scroll up. Who was asking the question about gRPC? Flatline was asking the question about gRPC. In a way, there's a similar difference between REST and SOAP, in that REST basically builds upon HTTP as the application protocol. So you have this concept of verbs and nouns, methods that operate upon URLs that represent resources that have representations, right? Whereas SOAP, like RPC, is a more remote procedure call style thing, and it sort of abuses, and I'm going to use that word out loud, SOAP abuses, just like GraphQL, abuses HTTP as it was designed, because it's just using HTTP as a transport layer, okay? The other difference, the other key difference, and you'll find this out if you watch the REST 2 minutes of video, is that while SOAP is a standard, REST is not a standard, it's an architectural style, okay? So REST is more loosely, well, no, it's very, very, very nicely defined, but it's not a standard that has a version number, for example, okay? SOAP, I think SOAP got up to 1.2 back in the day. I remember the old, I was there when SOAP was born, and we also had XML RPC, which was, you know, a very, very simplified sort of XML-based RPC style protocol over HTTP. Or over other transports as well, actually. But anyway, yeah, SOAP has been around. You had to capture it, yes, but nice one. Visas, good morning to you as well, and welcome. Okay, so I hope that answers your question a little bit, Akhilesh. Please keep the questions coming. This is absolutely more than what I'd hoped for. This is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So ask all the questions you want. So. A lot of the APIs, the vast majority of the APIs on the API Business Hub are OData. So it's really important for us to understand OData from the ground up. And that's what I'm hoping to convey over the next few weeks, okay? We're going to take our time. So Flatline says it would be a really perfect experiment to embed Node.js into ERP. So instead of Segware, which is the transaction, we can access tables with Node. I know there is CAP, but it is not available for normal on-prem ERP. That's a really interesting thing. By the way, did you know that there is, well, I don't know if it's official or unofficial, there is actually a JavaScript interpreter in ABAP. How crazy is that? Okay. There's also, I mean, over the years, over the decades, there has been all sorts of different conversations about direct access to tables in the underlying the ERP system, you know, from the R3 world. We didn't really think about that in R2 because it was a very different architectural structure. But in R3, there's all sorts of back and forth debates over the decades about I want to access these tables directly. But if you think about how the ERP data model is modeled, there are all sorts of different mechanisms at the persistence layer that don't necessarily make sense at the logical data model layer. So, you know, there is a little bit of caution required when you want to start to think about accessing tables directly. Okay. So Nikhil, actually, DJ VJ, wouldn't it be fair to say that OData is not the best candidate for massive data migrations? Instead, shouldn't we be looking at LTMOM, LTMC, no segue? So, Nikhil, that's a really good point. I mean, I didn't want to dig into that question about from Vijay about the ETL and stuff, but you're absolutely right. You know, horses for courses, right? So OData, yes, you can consume and create large amounts of data with OData, but OData is more of a transactional protocol. Okay, it's for pushing and pulling data in a more transactional sense. Absolutely, that's a really good point, Nikhil. For mass ETL, extraction, transport, load, you would want to probably use a different approach, right? So yeah, but sometimes in the whole sort of migration mechanisms that you're building, you may want to call out to an external service to bring in maybe enum data or to bring in reference data. And for that, you know, OData or, you know, a similar protocol would be okay, right? So is there any utility, Samir asks, to monitor RAP API payloads and reprocess it like IDOC? Any plan to bring such a tool? I don't know. That's a really good question. I have some colleagues, Nico and I've seen Nico here, we have colleagues that know more about that than we do. So we'll take that question away and ask it. So thank you very much. Keep the questions coming. It's fantastic, right? So let's get on, while you keep the questions coming, for ETL Go binary. Oh, that's controversial, Flatline. That's controversial. Go binary. I mean, you know, the whole sort of binary, the binary protocol, you know, versus non-binary. That's a really, really interesting debate. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Flatline. I love all these opinions. Opinions are what drives us and what helps us learn, right? And oh yeah, I don't know about that. Let me go and find out about that. So all opinions are welcome. So I would suggest that anybody who wants to play along, either literally live with us right now, or also, you know, in between this episode and next Friday's episode, go to this URL. I've just pasted the URL. Let me just paste it in again because it's sort of scrolled up and people may have missed it. And I want to establish this as the baseline for, I've got a simple OData service that we're going to be playing with and exploring. And I've also got a super simple UI5 app that consumes that OData service. Okay, so I want to show you how to sort of embrace this repository and how to start looking at it so you can play with it over the weekend, during the week and whatever, and, you know, and have a little bit of a play and do the things we're hopefully going to be doing in this hour, right? So Raghu says, what about folks who are new to SAP and don't know, sorry, did I say SAP? New to SAP and don't know SAP ABAP? Oh my goodness. So Nico may be able to help me out here and post some links to, we've got an amazing set of tutorials. We've got Code Jam coming up if you're in Newtown Square, for example. Recently, we're going to be having more in-person Code Jams on the SAP ABAP and RAP topic. There's all sorts of resources on our YouTube channel, the SAP Developers YouTube channel. And we also have, what was I going to say? We've also got some sample applications in the SAP Samples repository. So, Helmut says Raguram CAP and BTP. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, I mean, if you want to learn ABAP, there are tons of resources. We also have Nico and I have a couple of colleagues, Rich and Mamiki, and Mamiki in particular is approaching learning ABAP from a beginner's point of view. So check out Mamiki's videos in 2 minutes of, and start there maybe. Okay, so for better understanding of REST architecture, I think Fielding's dissertation is a good reference, Rajesh. Rajshikar. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. It is a really good reference. It's quite hard reading. I found it quite hard to read through, but it's definitely worth it. But check out if you want a very quick summary of the dissertation, very quick. Then the 2 minutes of REST API basics on our video channel. That will give you a bit of an overview. Brilliant, brilliant. So thank you so much, everybody. I see some services in SAP API Business Services, REST API and OData API. What exactly are the differences between both? Brilliant question. Brilliant question. Thanks, Pavan. So you can almost see that think of when you see REST API, think of this API is an HTTP-based API that partakes of the REST architectural style in some form. Okay, there are different levels of REST enlightenment. So just think of REST APIs as HTTP APIs if they don't say OData. And OData is a RESTful HTTP API that has been standardized and codified into an actual standard. So it's predictable, it's reliable, it's maintained, because HTTP APIs and REST APIs in general, and I'm waving my arms about here, they can have, within the constraints of HTTP as an application protocol, they can have any shape or size or color that you want. They don't all work in the same way because, of course, HTTP is a very forgiving and flexible protocol, application protocol. You can say here's a language, ABAP or Node.js or C#. Okay, build something in that. Every particular thing will be slightly different, right? You're still using the same language. In the same way, RESTful APIs may be different to one another. Whereas OData, one of the things that is so beautiful about OData is that it's predictable. You've seen one OData service and you know how to interact with it. You know how to interact with all OData services, right? That's the beauty of OData. My goodness me, this chat is absolutely fantastic. So before open source CAP, embed CAP into on-prem ERP, XS never took off, maybe this will. Flatline. I love your comments. I'm not gonna dive into that because that's a whole another ball game. So send me the link of Fisher. Send me the head of, who's that? What's that film? Bring me the head of, I don't know. Fisher. Are you talking about Andre Fisher? Yeah. If you want to learn some more stuff beyond the SAP Developer Advocates content for RAP and ABAP, check out Andre Fisher. He's got a lot of blog posts on SAP Community, for example. There we go. Okay, so let us, and this is what I think you can do as well. I'm going to start, that's not 736 anyway, there we go. I'm going to start VS Code, right? Rather than, I thought, I'm a terminal sort of person, but I thought rather than use the terminal, let's make it a little bit higher level, and let's use VS Code, because everybody can use VS Code, everybody can access VS Code, so let's do that, okay? So, start up VS Code. I'm going to say here, source control, clone a repository. Now, I'm going to go across to here, and I'm going to get the URL of that repository, so you can do this as well. You can do it live with me now if you want, or you can do it after the fact, watch the video again. Where are we? There we go. Put the URL in there, clone that. Where do I want to clone it? I'll clone it to my Scratch directory here. Okay, would you like to open the clone? Yes, please, open. Right, okay, so that's all you need to do to grab the stuff that we've prepared for this little mini-series on Back to Basics with OData. Okay, and in here, we have a CAP project, okay, Cloud Application Programming Model, because one of the beauties about CAP, Cloud.SAP, it's got some great documentation, and it also, just like RAP within the ABAP stack, CAP enables you to build OData services like that. Okay, it's just absolutely incredible. Before, I think it's difficult to remember now what it was like before CAP and also RAP to a certain extent came along. It was quite a struggle. Those who've been around for a while, like me, will know how much of an effort it was to create an OData service so you can play around with it. Okay, with CAP, it's like 2 minutes, right? So there we go. So in fact, if we search for OData, there we go, OData, serving OData APIs is brilliant. A whole load of documentation, and the CAP model in particular is very accomplished at doing this. And also, if you go down to the, where was that? Oh, there we go, yeah. So you can learn more. This is what I wanted to show you. Here's some links about getting started on odata.org, right? Getting started, we'll look at that in a minute. But also we want to take a deep dive into OData, right? So there's some tutorials. So I'm going to share these tutorials here. This will give you an idea of where OData came from, okay? Who knows? Let me know in the chat. Who knows where OData came from, the origins of OData, right? CAP is now on Eclipse 2. Anyone with feedback on it here? CAP is everywhere. You can, I develop CAP applications with Vim, in my terminal, right? It's just a programming model, series of libraries and tools. So, you can use Notepad and, command.exe if you want on Windows. You can use, Vim and in Tmux, for example. You can use an Eclipse, whatever editor of choice you have. Okay, so cap heart. What's the heart thing? Heart? I don't know how to do it. Heart. There we go. So we've got the VS Code, and we've just cloned this repo here. And let's have a look at the README. Let's right-click, open preview. Right, there's back to basics. I'm also going to open up a terminal because I feel more comfortable with a terminal. So terminal, new terminal. There we go. Right, and in order to get started, okay, all you need to do is Gary, good morning, and Akhilesh and Niels and Samir and Pavan, you're all correct. You're all correct. If you have a look at the get an introduction to OData mission, there is a learn about OData fundamentals tutorial, and in fact, DJ Adams, Monday morning thoughts OData. I'm sure I wrote, yeah, we go, Monday about OData. This gives you a very, very deep, green screen alert, thanks. Oh, Ian, oh my goodness, what's going on? This way here. Oh, maybe it's the sun. The sun's coming through. It is the, oh, there we go. Thank you, Green. Thank you, Green. Thank you, Ian. Green screen alert. Yes, that's what I like to see. Brilliant. So you're all correct. And in fact, if you have a look, OData goes all the way back to 1995. Okay, so here's a blog post on SAP Community that you may want to read over a coffee. But MCF begat RSS, which begat Atom, which begat the Atom Publishing Protocol, which was a protocol to push and pull items in an Atom feed, okay? And Microsoft took the beauty and the hard work that was the Atom format and protocol and did something wonderful with them, which was to turn them into OData, okay? And you can see the origins of RSS and Atom in OData. And where can you, and so it's basically, so Gary was right, and Niels and Samir and Pavan, it came from, OData came from Microsoft, but Microsoft took, in the nicest possible way, all the work that we did with RSS and Atom and the RFC 4287 and the RFC 5023, which are correspondingly the Atom format and the Atom publishing protocol, and turn them into this beautiful OData thing, which is all about a feed of header and items, okay? Blog post, a weblog with items, right? So that the general idea was, oh, Joe Blow has beaten to it, right shoulder. Okay, right shoulder. Green's turn. Oh, can I just, let me have a look at my, I think it seems okay now. Left, right, yeah, okay, cool. So Flatline says, since OData contains metadata about data type, file names, etc. Does anyone know a tool that generates sample requests from an OData input? I think that there's a tool called XOData that might allow you to do that. And I think if you're in the Microsoft world, for example, or at least the .NET world, I think there are tools that will generate static libraries for you. I'm not sure whether they'll generate sample requests. That's a really good question. I don't know. In fact, let's use Flatline's question to have a look what Flatline is talking about. OData contains metadata. Right. So one of the really nice things, yeah, so we've seen this here. Learn about data, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy paste this thing here. And you can copy paste this thing as well into the terminal, CDS deploy. I'm just going to use SQLite as the persistence layer. So it's created a SQLite DB there. Shouldn't it not update there? Oh, there we go, SQLite DB, right? And then I'm going to run CDS run. Now, what we've got in this OData service, which we'll start having a look at in a second, is the simplest, almost the simplest thing that could possibly work. I've got a data definition. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. Cap release notes. That, by the way, popping up was the automatically updating wonderful CAP, Cloud Application Programming Model extension for VS Code. Okay, latest version, April 2022. Cool. Thank you very much. So here we can see in my schema.cds, I've just got products, suppliers, and categories, entities. I've just almost copied from the very famous Northwind OData. Who knows about the Northwind OData service, right? Let me know in the chat, right? Entity suppliers, I've got products, suppliers, and categories. You can imagine that a product has a supplier, and also a product belongs to a category. So there are some relationships there. This is like a mini version Northwind, a mini version of Northwind. Now, one of the things that you'll want to have a play around with while we're discovering OData is services.odata.org. Let me go and press enter on there, actually. There we go, services.odata.org. The most exciting looking web page in the universe, maybe not, but it's a really nice way of saying, let me just have a little play with an OData service, okay? Now, this is sort of slightly old, but still super useful. When I click on browser read-only Northwind service, we get some XML. I'm going to make that bigger, right? We get some XML, which is immediately potentially quite scary, right? Northwind is a rival company to Acme. You know what? It only occurred to me the other day why it's called Acme, because, you know, obviously Acme is at the start of the alphabet, but Acme means peak, pinnacle, the best, right? Acme. Who knew? And also, and Acme was in the 70s, a company that also had computer products. And there's also, right at the other end of the alphabet, this is completely random, was a company that made terminals or other equipment like that called Zenith, which is also at the end of the alphabet, the opposite end, but also means the same thing. Zenith, the peak, the nadir, right? So who knew? So rival company to Acme, yes. Northwind, the S-Flight. Yes, Niels is saying Northwind is like the S-Flight in OData world. Yes, so S-Flight, for those who are not aware, S-Flight is a sample service that's a data model that, you know, it's easy for our brains to think about, you know, airlines, airports, passengers, maybe not passengers, but, you know, those sorts of things, quite easy to think about. The same goes for Northwind. It's basically built upon the Northwind traders, and you've got customers, employees, orders, products, regions, shippers, you know, all sort of quite boring, but boring in a good way. You don't have to think, what the heck is that? Does that mean? I don't even know what that thing is. You know, we all understand what products and orders and suppliers things are, right? So that's what Northwind is. Now, Northwind v4 allows cores. Yes, exactly, Peter. So Peter's saying, and this is really important, Peter's saying Northwind v4 allows cores. Cores, cross-origin resource sharing. That means there's a restriction, there's a security restriction in browsers that prevents an application, for example, loaded from that URL over there, from accessing data from a different URL over here, as in a different scheme and or domain and or port, okay? For safety reasons, security reasons. So you can... However, CORS is a standard that sort of sits upon top of HTTP, which allows servers to say, actually, you can call me from, you know, from somewhere that's not me. Okay, so one of the really nice things, if you want to start to play around consuming Northwind OData services from your app that you built in this corner over here, you can do. Okay, so Northwind v4 responses will work for you. That's what Peter's saying, basically. Is it possible, Pavan says, to get the metadata for the OData service in JSON? Oh, what a brilliant question. Theoretically, yes. Practically, no. There is an initiative to produce, or there is a definition that describes how to fulfill a request for OData metadata in a different representation, right? Resources, representations. This is all about REST, okay, and HTTP. In a different representation other than XML, but practically speaking, I haven't really found an OData service that supports that. Okay, so theoretically yes, practically no. So Vijay says, yeah, you can convert it, right? But you can't actually request it. Theoretically you can. There's a standard that says you can, but practically there are very few services that will return the metadata resource in a non-XML representation. Okay, so yeah, there are ways around it. You can convert the XML to JSON, as Vijay is saying here, but practically, from a pure perspective, not really. So this is Northwind, services.odata.org. Let's just stare at the yes. So as also Rajshekar says, you can theoretically, it's the v4 version of OData that describes the ability for servers to respond with a JSON representation of the metadata. But all I'm saying is most servers do not yet implement that facility. Okay, and Rajshekar, please tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm really sorry. I'm going to call you Raj, if that's okay. Raj is saying with V2 it's not. So it's worth talking about. There's so much to talk about, right? There's so much to talk about. What time is it? 8:40. Okay. So OData is quite a mature protocol. In fact, OData spec, github.com, qmacro, OData spec. I went through a while ago. No, what is it called? What did I? Repositories. I wanted to know how to interpret the specs plural. How to interpret the OData standards documents, okay? Because there's a ton of documents and they look quite scary, okay? If we look at OData V2 specification, right? Just do a search for that, okay? We get this like, oh my goodness, what is that? Part 1? You mean there's more than one part? Protocol? What are all these URLs? It's like, oh my goodness, and what does that even mean? OS and CSO2 and right? It's an incredibly well thought out and well documented protocol. It's a standard, right? Looked after by OASIS, which is a standards body. So what I did was I went through all those documents to try to work out how they related to each other. So have a look at this, and this will tell you or give you an overview of where OData came from, also the dates, right? So we've got the different types of documents, right? So committee note. So as we go through CN, CS, PRD, COS, OS, right? The committee note is like the least important, right at the start of a journey of some sort of part of the standard, and then eventually going through here, it becomes an OASIS standard. It's a very rough, hand-wavy sort of description of what those different things are. Have a look at the editors. Yes, Niels, that was a bit of I was going to leave that as a bit of an Easter egg, but you found it. If you have a look at one of the editors, in fact, the chair of the OASIS Technical Committee, it's none other than Michael Pizzo from Microsoft, but our very own, collectively, I'm talking collectively here, not just SAP employees, but our very own Ralph Handel, okay, who in my eyes is an incredibly generous person with his time to explain things here. Yes, exactly. So I think that's what you're pointing out here, Niels, right? So yeah, so Ralph and other wonderful people like Martin and Michael and lots of other folks, right, have been driving this standard and making sure it's really solid and everything. And the result of that, Raj is okay. Thanks, Raj. So what we need is a Discord channel so I can hear you pronounce it and tell me how to pronounce it. But anyway. No, I don't want a Discord channel. It's too complicated for me. So we've got all these specifications, right? And you can see here that even version 4 of the OData standard started its journey. I don't know why that. Scroll across. Started its journey back in 2013. So OData version 4 was born 9 years ago. Okay, so we're going to be looking in our journey, looking at OData. We're going to be looking at OData version 4, but it's also important to sort of not lose sight of where it came from. So many of us will be consuming and knowing about version 2. So if you go back to the standard here, so the services.odata, not the standard, the URL services.odata.org. You can even go back to V2. Okay, and V2 is the first real usable OData, in my opinion, OData version goes way back when. There are still on the API Business Hub some V2 OData services, right? And if you look at a classic sort of client library like the OData model in the UI5 development kit in SAP UI5 and Open UI5, there are two OData models. There's OData model V2 and OData model V4 for consuming the respective versions of OData, because as OData has come along and matured into something that's actually beautiful, there have been some few bumps and warts on the way, okay, and there's been some changes. So yeah, it's also important to understand the differences and to understand that there are different versions of OData. It all pretty much works in the same way, but there are subtle differences, and lots of improvements, especially when we get to V4. And V4 is really, in my brain, where it really becomes a properly established OASIS committee nurtured standard. Okay, so it's really important. So we'll be using V4 as the OData version that we sort of play around with. Okay, so there we go. So Niels wanted to point out that to show that the dedication of SAP to OData protocol. Good work, Niels. Good work. So Chesh, welcome. Not seen you for a while. It says V3 in the Northwind URL. Fair to say SAP skipped adopting V3. Yes, I think I think it's fair to say, again, my opinion, most companies skipped the adoption of V3. In my mind, V3 was like more of a stepping stone between V2 and V4. Okay, I've seen very few V3 OData services. It's either V2 or V4. So yeah, to see a V3 OData service is like, seeing something rare in the, I saw a V3 OData service the other day. It was amazing. I wrote it down in my book. So yeah, it is fair to say that, yeah. So this is, and we got digression on digression on digression, right? However, there was a question about metadata. One of the most basic things is that in the OData standard is that it's all predictable, it's reliable, it's solid, you know what you're dealing with, and also there are what I call two well-known documents, well-known endpoints for any OData service. First of all, you have the service document, okay? And the service document is what we're looking at here. So here's the sort of the base, let's call it the base URL. Let's go to V4, right? No, actually, let's go to V2, the base URL of the Northwind service, the V2 Northwind service, as supplied by this services.odata.org website, which I think is run by OASIS, right? So we can see the service document, it's got the word Atom in it, right? Atom publishing protocol. And if you look at the Atom standard, which again is a little bit like RSS, it's like the next level on from RSS, which is a machine readable form of your weblog so that you can subscribe to people. Oh, I'm interested in, what Niels is saying on his weblog and what Raj is saying and what whoever's saying. I want to add those to my RSS reader. A little bit like you add podcasts to your podcast player, right? These are all in RSS format or Atom format. You have the concept of, in fact, let's have a look. If you go here, qmacro.org, there's my website and my blog is here with all the blog posts and everything. If you have a look at the feed, okay, feed is like a generic term. It could be RSS, it could be Atom, and my feed is an Atom feed. Okay, make that a little bit bigger. There we go, there, feed. You can see, if you want to subscribe to my ramblings on my blog here on qmacro.org, right? You can point your RSS reader, your feed reader, to this XML resource, which has an the outermost feed element, which is described by the Atom standard. And the feed has some general information, title, and when it was last updated, and whatever, the author, me. And then it has a series of entries, right? Entry, there's a blog post, right? And there's a blog post, entry. There's the end of the entry. There's the new entry, title, link, blah, 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 right? In the same way. And let's go back. Let's bear that in mind. Where is it? Where's it gone? There we go. Atom also has a concept of a service document which describes what sort of collections, mine would only have one collection. And then you have, for example, the metadata, which is another of it's the second of the two well-known endpoints. So it's the service document, the URL with $metadata on the end. That's the second of two well-known documents. That is the data model, okay? And that's what we've been talking about when people are asking, can you get the data model, the metadata in JSON? No, yes, theoretically with OData 4.0 you can, but there's very few implementations as far as I can see. It's going to be an XML, probably. EDMX, entity data model in XML, I think it stands for XML, right? It's it's the classic sort of XML, beautifully structured and standard, but a little bit sort of scary to look at. But you can see here that the entity data model, the metadata, describes the data. Oh, I'm missing out some chat here, sorry. So Nico says, what the browser extension are you using to view XML to get the tag highlighting, etc.? thank you for making that asking that question. I'm using XML Tree. Okay, so Chrome XML Tree. There, XML Tree, that's what I use. I've been using it for years. It's really nice. So stick that in your Chrome browser and your XML will come out all nice, all right? So you can see here that this metadata document, this metadata resource, which has an XML representation here. I'm using resource and representation deliberately, explicitly to drive home the HTTP and RESTful nature of this whole thing, right? That has a number of entity types, a number of data types. You've got categories, you've got customer demographic, you've got customers. This is Northwind, remember, it's all the nice things. So, and then within an entity type definition, you've got properties, and you might have navigation properties as well, pointers from one entity to the next, to its related thing, right? So we've got category here, and there are products in categories. So you can sort of understand why we have, for example, a category ID and a category name like beverages, and a category description like things to drink, whatever it is. We've got a category, we've got a picture here, binary picture, just to show that you can have binary blobs, binary large objects inside an OData resource, right? But anyway, and then we've got navigation property, which is basically a pointer from category to products. But we'll start to look at navigation properties maybe next time, okay? So how do we actually see the data? And this is now where I'm hopefully going to show you category. I'm going to do it all, by the way, is the URL bar in my browser big enough, okay, for you to see? We can do it a different way if we want, but let me know if it's big enough for you to see. So I'm going to hit, type in category here. So I've got the base URL of the OData service. Then I'm going to put in, well, in fact, why am I typing the word category here? Let's go down here. In fact, it's probably not category anyway, is it? It's entity type, entity set. There. So you have a concept. In fact, let me just hit category. Let me just do what I was going to do, right? Resource not so we got to become comfortable with the error message we might get when we're experimenting and kicking the tires with OData services. So that means you said category, segment category. It's like a path segment here, right? Thank you, Jay. John, is that you, John? Thank you. Thanks for letting me know, John. So that's saying, I don't know, category. What? Right. However, of course, we know that it knows in the metadata that there is a category entity type. But what we deal with when it comes to collections of things, right, are things not called entity types, which describe entities, but entity sets, like a set, a collection. Okay, so entity set. Okay, so we have this entity container, and it's lots of words, there's lots of terminology that I don't want to land on your head in this first episode, okay? But there's a concept of a collection of things, a list of one or more things, products, customers, prices, whatever. And there's also in OData, there's lots of concepts, but the two key concepts is a collection of things and one thing, okay? So let's just look at that. So here's a collection of things, it's called an entity set, and one thing is called an entity. Set of entities, right? Entity set. So, and the entity set name is not category, but categories. So let's go for that entity set there, categories. And we can see that we have some XML. Now, don't worry about this weird nonsense at the bottom. This is actually the binary blob. That tautological? This is the blob, the binary large object. Okay. Notice, by the way, I'm suddenly thinking, why is it not structured? Why is it not color-coded like Nico was asking about before? It's probably because the content type returned is not what the XML tree can recognize. It's probably returned as, in fact, well, no, let's not go there. Let's not digress. Can you see, if I do that, can you see the similarity? On the right-hand side, above my head, in the color, that is the atom feed for my blog. On the left-hand side, no, other arm, can never get it right. On the left-hand side, over there in black and white, we have an OData resource, a list, a collection, an entity set, where the entity type is category. Okay, look at it. Feed, feed, ID, ID. And then we get, where is it? Entry. It's a bit weird formatted, but anyway, entry, entry. And this massive binary, this is, maybe I should do something that's not categories with a massive binary object. Products, right? Products. There. Oh, there we go. Ah, maybe it was because the binary object was messing up with the XML tree. There we go. Here's a better example. So feed, feed, entry, entry, title, title. Okay? Entry, end of entry, start of new entry. Okay? And there is the exact sort of genesis, the OData, it's RSS. Well, it's Atom, which was RSS, right? So why, and this is V2, right? And by default, does that explain maybe a little bit, shows a little bit the origins of OData, right? So let me just close that. We don't need that anymore. Now, what are we looking at? We're looking at XML. What's all that about? Because by default, in version 2 of the OData standard, the OData protocol standard, the resource representation, the representation of entity set resources in OData V2 is XML. You can request JSON, and that's what I think somebody was saying before. Oh, lots of chat. I'm sorry. It is me. It seems I've logged me in with a different account today for some reason. Well, welcome, John. Anyway, welcome, JBM. So I'm using plain REST with JSON, and my ETL is sometimes integrated. Yes. So Bilen, that's a great conversation you're having with who was it was asking about ETL? That's fantastic. Have as many conversations on here as you want. I love conversations. I love content and chat and opinions and arguments with me and telling everything I'm doing wrong and everything more. So Raj, oh, and VJ, sometimes platform restrictions won't allow you to create that log document. Okay, that's cool. All chat is good. In the last few minutes, I want to just talk about OData V2, what we're looking at here, XML. Now, some will already know that you can, right, add a, and this is another term that's going to be important, an OData term, add a system query option. Format equals JSON, or is it format equals Atom? I can't remember. There we go. We can say, we can add a system query option, $format equals something, to say, give me this entity set resource in a JSON format. Now, that's just a convenient way of doing some content negotiation, which sort of sits underneath OData at the HTTP level. Let's try that. Let me just go back. And in fact, I'm going to leave it. I know we're not finishing yet, but I'm going to leave you with a question for next week. What's that D all about? Okay. Does anybody like me wondered why it's always D there? Have a think about that for next week. Anyway, I'm going to go here and go into my terminal and grab it. Curl, let's go verbose products and see what we get. We get the XML, we get the resource that we saw there, right? So, in fact, let me just say top equal, no. Yeah, let's introduce something. Top, there's another system query option. Just give me the first one, okay? Just give me the first one so I don't have to scroll up as much, right? There we go, right. So there, now if I scroll up here, we can see the response. By the way, if you're new to curl and you say verbose, it will give you everything curl is doing in the conversation between it and the remote server, which is the services.odata.org server, right? The things with the brackets going that way is, this is what curl is sending, and the things with brackets going that way is what curl is receiving from server, right? And the things with asterisks like mark bundler, this is like just curl telling us what it's doing, right? And other sort of out of band information about, for example, the TLS certificate, right? What we can see here is what we asked for with curl was accept asterisk dot slash asterisk. Give me any format. Just give me any format. Give me any format. Right? And so by default, V2 servers will say, well, there you go. By default, I'm going to give you XML, specifically Atom XML. Okay. Now, let's see if we can persuade the server with proper HTTP content negotiation to give us JSON or something like that. So verbose, and we say header accept not asterisk slash asterisk, right? But instead application application JSON. Let's see what it does. There we go. We have used proper a part of the HTTP application protocol called content negotiation, where a client negotiates with the server what type, what representation of the resource it is requesting, what representation it wants. Okay, there's a difference between the resource, the thing on the server, the list of products, and how that resource is represented. You could have maybe a picture, you know, a GIF of the list of the products, right? That's theoretically valid as a resource representation, not a very useful one. So here we've seen two representations of the same resource. Here we've now got it in JSON. In fact, if we pipeline to FX here, we can see all that. Beautiful. So we now got JSON. Anyway, it's 9 o'clock. I can't believe it. So thank you all so much for joining. Shall we do this again? Shall we carry on next week? We haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what we wanted to cover, right? So you've got this thing here. Have a look at that. Have a play with that. You can go, for example, here. Once you've done this, by the way, what I want to show you, you can go and have a look at the products. There, you've got your own little mini Northwind. You've got also a simple app, which we'll look at next week, okay? So thanks so much for joining. Thanks for the brilliant chat and the brilliant questions and the brilliant conversation. Same time, same place. Next week, we'll carry on with this where we left off, if that's okay with you. So brilliant. And I wish you a wonderful, what day is it today? Wonderful Friday and weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.